I'd like to explain a little bit about the role of the Corps of Engineers in this process. Under our federal permit program, the Corps of Engineers is responsible for regulating dredge and fill activities in waters of the United States under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. Hence, the 404 permit that we often have to issue for projects that are requested to be done. As well as work within Section 10 navigable waterways under the Rivers and Harbors Act. Under these laws and other federal resource related statutes, the Corps evaluates potential impacts that would be caused by the proposed project prior to making a permit decision. In addition to the proposed project, the Corps must determine whether that proposed project is the least environmentally damaging alternative that meets the overall project purpose. In addition, no permit can be granted if we find that the proposal is contrary to the public interest. The public interest determination requires a careful weighing of those factors relevant to the particular project. The project's benefits must be balanced against its reasonably foreseeable detriments. In meeting our regulatory responsibility, the Corps of Engineers is neither a project proponent or opponent. The Corps is also responsible for reviewing all requests to modify, alter, or occupy any existing Corps-constructed public works projects under Section 408 of the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1899. Under these laws, in order for the district to approve any proposed alteration request, it must meet Corps standards, it must not be injurious to the public interest or affect the USACE project's ability to meet its congressionally authorized purpose. A typical review under Section 408 requires not only technical analysis, but also NEPA compliance, National Environmental Policy Act compliance. I would say that this particular project will require both a 408 permit as well as a 404 permit. That's accurate, right? As you know, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and Los Angeles County have applied to our agency, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, for permits to restore the BALLONA wetlands. The department has applied for the regulatory Section 404 and Section 10 permits. The county, as the local sponsor for the federally constructed BALLONA channel, has applied for the Section 408 permit as well. So that's why both of these agencies are here tonight, and we'll speak here in just a second after I'm complete with my opening comments. While we will be evaluating these permit applications, the proposed project is not a Corps proposal. We are here in a permitting context only. The Corps and the department have jointly prepared a draft environmental impact statement / environmental impact report pursuant to our responsibilities under the National Environmental Policy Act and the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. The draft document has been released for public review and comment. This evening, the Corps is continuing its effort to gather comments regarding the proposed project from the general public, who will carefully consider all comments prior to making our final permit decision. And even following this meeting, the public has until February 5th, 2018 to provide written comments. So you have nearly 3 more months to submit comments. Please note we will equally weigh comments provided verbally or in written format. I will now turn it over to Mr. Richard Berg of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, who will explain his agency's role as the applicant and give some opening comments. And they are also the CEQA lead agency, and he'll provide a brief overview of that project. Following Mr. Berg, Mr. Frank Wu of Los Angeles County Department of Public Works will explain his agency's role as the Section 408 applicant. This will help us transition to the public input session. At this time, once again, I'll emphasize, if you would like to speak tonight and you have not filled out and turned in a card to our staff in the back, please do that. And please provide that speaker card to any member of our staff at the table, or if you catch our attention, we can come and get that from you. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Richard Berg.
Thank you, Colonel Gibbs. As Colonel Gibbs said, my name is Richard Berg, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I am the Environmental Program Manager for the South Coast region for the Wildlife Lands and Fisheries Program. Sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry. It covers all the coastal counties from Santa Barbara down to San Diego. First of all, let me thank...
Standing up when you speak.
Yeah.
We can't even see.
Do that, yes?
Thank you.
First of all, I want to make my comments really brief because we're here to hear you, not for you to hear me. So I will keep them brief. And I want to thank everybody for coming out. I know we may have disagreements about how this project gets done, but I think we all agree that we love Iona. We want to see what's best, simply put. Our department basically carries two responsibilities for this project. We are not only the lead agency, but as the state, we are the trustee agency also for the CEQA. Okay. And just further on the comment period, again, we also extended the CEQA comment period until February 5th at 5 p.m. at 2018. And with that, I'm going to sign off and I'll give it to Frank.
Thank you. All right, I will also make my comments very brief. My name is Frank Wu, and I am with the LA County Department of Public Works. I'm a senior...
Speak louder.
Louder? Okay. I'm a senior civil engineer with the department, and I'm also the Santa Monica Bay Watershed Manager. And in that capacity, my job is to conduct the long-term infrastructure planning for the flood control district, and including the areas within the BALLONA Creek watershed. Still can't hear me. All right, even with the mic. Okay. Now, Colonel Gibbs has already more or less described the role of the flood control district, and we are the local LACTA agency responsible for the operation and maintenance of the BALLONA Creek flood control levee. And because of that, we are also the applicant on the Section 408 permit that the Colonel mentioned. The district's role, in addition to that primary role, is of course to ensure that the project provides adequate flood protection, which is our first and foremost mission. And so we will be doing that by reviewing very closely the design plans of the project once it gets to that point. The district also expects to have operation and maintenance responsibilities once the project is complete. The details of that will be worked out, but we expect that we will be maintaining the new levee if it's constructed. With that, I will stop there and hand this back to you.
All right, we will be taking oral testimony. We're real close from the public. In the order we have received your speaker cards. Again, some individuals, I think there's about a stack of 10 are speaking on behalf of a group. Others are speaking on their own behalf. We have decided how long you have based on the number of speaker cards we've received so far. Groups will be given 5 minutes. They'll be given 5 minutes. And when that person steps in front of the mic, we would ask the group to stand up so we can acknowledge the group, and then you can sit right back down. But we would ask that, please. So those speaking on behalf of groups have 5 minutes. Those individual speakers will be given 2 minutes. All persons in your group, I've already said that, must stand, but then you can sit back down. And as I mentioned earlier, if you would like to speak, you may hear something that you would like to emphasize, or some of you may wish to not speak at all, even though you're signed up, if someone has really driven the point home that you would like to. So again, if you think you want to speak, please prepare the card now and turn it over to our staff. All oral or written testimony will become part of the administrative record for this permit application. Once we have the written transcript of the testimony, copies may be viewed at our office or purchased. Okay, so as you make comments, please note, we're going to have a timer on the table right here. So the speaker's standing there, you'll be able to see the timer, and you'll know how much time that you have. The light will be green when you begin. When you have 1 minute left, the light will turn yellow. When your time is up, the light will turn red. Please immediately wrap up your comments and return to your seat at that time. As the speakers approach the mic, we would ask that you say your name and spell your name. We have a stenographer that's capturing everything so that it's part of the official administrative record. So please spell your name, and I will ask my staff, because some may have longer names than others. It may take a few seconds to spell, that we don't start the timer until the name has been spelled. Once again, I would ask that you please respect these time limits. We're looking at about 2 hours worth of comments as it stands right now. So it's very important that for everyone to be able to speak, that we stick to those time limits. Cooperation and keeping to your allocated time so the meeting runs smoothly and we can hear all people who wish to speak. Once again, I would emphasize, please respect each other so that all comments can be heard, even if you don't agree with what's being said. I'm sure there will be much that some of you don't agree with that's said, and others that do agree and would like to applaud. That only keeps us from hearing all the words, being able to capture all of those. So please be respectful of each other. Okay, so as we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the first 3 speakers to the microphone. The first name will approach the microphone, and then we've got 2, so to speak, on deck. And that's going to help the night go a little bit quicker as well. So we've got these 2 chairs on the left side as I'm facing you. Please sit there, and as soon as a speaker completes their comments, the next speaker will approach the microphone, filling in the seats. So I'll do my best. I apologize up front because I'm sure 2 of the first 3 names I'm going to mispronounce. So please bear with me on that. Okay, that's why we're going to have you spell the names. So with that being said, speak clearly and slowly so the court reporter is able to hear and transcribe everything you say. So with that being said, we're going to start just a few minutes early.
And thank you too from the Army Corps of Engineers. Appreciate the time, and thank you. My name is Robert Van de Hoek. I am president of the BALLONA Institute, but I like what Richard Berth of the Department of Fish and Wildlife from the state of California said, that there is one thing we all agree on. I do believe that. We all love BALLONA. The no action alternative is the one to choose, because the department has already become the caretaker steward of it for 10 years now, more than 10 years, I think 15 years now. So during these 15 years, there's been a lot of actions that your department staff have done. I've known all the 3 different former wildlife and environmental scientists, 5 I think, actually not 3, there's been 5 that have been here in either 2 years, 1 year, 4 years, 4-year terms. And they've all done projects without having an EIR, EIS. And that doesn't make it illegal. They did a brief, no action, they did an environmental assessment internally on the different little projects they're doing, and then they can be approved after getting a coastal commission permit. So lots of activities can happen without having to do an EIR, EIS, and a lot has happened. The County of Los Angeles has been a good neighbor to the state of California and has done small projects without EIRs on vegetation protection in the river. I like to call it the Rio Ballona rather than Ballona Creek, and hold to the Spanish name of the Ballona name. The example is the coyote came back to Ballona in 2008. We have really good photo documentation from photographer Jonathan Coffin and my own field notes that show now that it's 10 years now that the coyote's been here. And having pups, having numerous pups. There's a very robust, mature dominant male and a dominant female coyote, and their offspring are on the edges of the Ballona wetlands waiting for when they might be able to take that space, because that pair will perish or die of old age or be hit by an automobile, God forbid. So there was no EIR or EIS done for bringing back the coyote. And that's where I choose the word recovery to use. The federal government uses the word recovery. They have recovery teams, recovery leader, recovery plans for endangered species. I think that recovery plans are useful for sensitive species, for common species too that are coming back. An endangered species called the El Segundo blue, one of our smallest butterflies, is federally listed and has a recovery plan. Does the blinking blue light mean my time is running out? 1 minute left, approximately. Is that
1 minute left.
1 minute left. Okay, thank you. I can no way touch on all the different species. I've just barely done the coyote and the El Segundo blue. There is a rare plant that I've just discovered, but I haven't even shared this with the department or I've just mentioned it to a journalist. But I will tell you more about this plant in the written comments. And it's in the area where you want to do bulldozing under all the 3 alternatives, and then after the bulldozing you want to build a large berm on top of that. And it's a really rare special plant of the California Native Plant Society. It may get onto the list as endangered during this project happening. I certainly can work to get it imperiled quite quickly by the department. And that's my time, but recovery is happening. Numerous species are coming back at this time without an EIR. So I think the no action alternative is the choice to go with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Frankel, would Ms. Gretchen Nordholm please come up? Mr. Frankel, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rex Frankel. I've been working to save all the Ballona wetlands and uplands since 1985. I'm the president and legal director of Ballona Ecosystem Education Project, and the spelling of my name is REXFRANKEL. Of the alternatives, if number 3 eliminated the dredging of Parcel A and featured historically accurate small creeks in it, then there'd be something to talk about. As it is, no project alternative is the only one that I could endorse at this moment. My main message to you is this. Your plan simply switches the locations of the wetlands and the uplands at Ballona. This switcheroo is a huge waste of our money. Restore the Ballona wetlands where they are now. Restore the Ballona uplands where they are now. You don't need to destroy Ballona in order to save it. There are many legal deficiencies in this environmental impact report. 1, your project violates the Coastal Act because it is not a restoration, and that's all the Coastal Act allows in a wetland. 2, your project violates the U.S. Clean Water Act because it floods the wetlands with polluted street runoff with no plan to clean it up. It is illegal to degrade the water quality in federally delineated wetlands, which is what the Ballona wetlands are. 3, your project also violates the California Environmental Quality Act in that it fails to analyze or include an essential part of the project, which is the Clean Water Act mandated street runoff cleanup plan that must be implemented before you can tear down the levees and flood the wetlands with water from Ballona Creek. You have no plan to clean up 99% of the flow of Ballona Creek, which comes on rainy days. You have no EIR, you have no analysis of its impacts or whether it will ever happen. The only plan that exists is to clean up flows in the dry season, which is not when most of the pollution and trash flows down the creek. This plan will mostly dry up the creek in the dry season by pumping 3/4 of creek flows to Hyperion Sewage Treatment Plant, which will then dump it in the ocean. A waste. Then your own EIR says it will be too difficult to provide fresh water to the wetlands, so you dismiss all freshwater alternatives as, quote, mechanized or high maintenance. But that problem of lack of fresh water is created by your partners. The chair of the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission happens to be the Los Angeles City Sanitation Department, who along with the LA County Flood Control District are doing the mechanically drying out Ballona Creek during most of the year. So you dismiss reasonable alternatives by using a straw man argument. You can fix all these legal violations this way. Give us a historically accurate project, thus it will fit the definition of restoration and comply with the Coastal Act. 2, don't flood our wetlands with polluted, cruddy Ballona Creek stormwater, which may never be cleaned up. Instead, pipe the clean flows during the dry season from the new Ballona Creek Dry Season Treatment Plant, which is being constructed in Culver City to restore the historical freshwater marshes of the Ballona wetlands. Because you won't be flooding the wetlands with pollution, you won't violate the U.S. Clean Water Act. Because upstream polluted stormwater will not flow into the Ballona wetlands, an upstream rainy season creek water cleanup plan is not an essential part of your project. Thus, you will then not violate CEQA by deferring analysis of what is no longer an essential part of your project. Finally, by leaving most of the land at Ballona where it is, leaving the wetlands where they are now, leaving the uplands where they are now. You will avoid destroying 1,000-year-old archaeological sites or desecrating graves, as the Playa Vista developer discovered on their Discovery Park. What an ironic name. You will avoid evicting the wildlife while engineering firms and their friends heal their wallets at our expense. Listen to the groups who saved over 600 acres when others were willing to let it be paved. This current plan is not bringing back Ballona. Let's actually restore Ballona, not turn it into something it never was. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Lisa Finiani. I'm a Gottlieb Fellow at Loyola Marymount University's Center for Urban Resilience. I am also the former Executive Director of Friends of Ballona Wetlands and have been involved with the educational tours and restoration projects in Area B of the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve for over 30 years. The Center for Urban Resilience recently joined as a new member of the Wetlands Restoration Principles Coalition of local nonprofits and organizations, which originally formed in 2015 to agree upon fundamental principles of sound wetlands restoration, not only at Ballona, but also in other critical wetland habitats up and down the state. With the successful stabilization of the Ballona tide gates by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the early 1990s, we have seen the Ballona population of the state's endangered Belding savanna sparrow rise from a dozen birds in 2009 to nearly 100 in 2015. I have reports from 2 experts on the Beldings to submit tonight. The hope was that more acreage of a habitat suited to the Beldings would be created in the more degraded areas of the ecological reserve, like Area A, when the restoration was to occur, to allow for the population to increase even more. In reviewing Alternative 1, we would like to see benchmark goals established in the creation of new habitat in Area A before altering the existing nesting habitat in Area B. The Belding savanna sparrow is a bellwether bird that represents a whole suite of other desirable wetland bird species we would like to see continue to thrive in the Ballona wetlands. For example, the stabilization of the pickleweed habitat in Area B has also attracted wintering flocks of western meadowlarks, a species we would like to see continue wintering at Ballona. Even better would be for the habitat to be created for the meadowlarks to nest, as well as reestablishment of suitable habitat for other birds that have been extirpated from the wetlands over the decades of degradation, such as the burrowing owl, loggerhead shrike, and white-tailed kite. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Nordum, and I'm not a scientist. I'm just a local resident of Playa del Rey, and I'm a fan of the birds. So I'm speaking for the birds tonight. I'm speaking for the owls. I'm speaking for the great blue heron rookery. I'm speaking for the egrets, and one of my personal favorites, the plovers. The plovers are these darling little birds that dart around on long legs, and I see them when I'm riding my bike along the bike path on the earthen berm, and they congregate in big flocks, and they dash back and forth, and they're darling. So when I think about restoring the wetlands, I wonder, how can bulldozing the wetlands be the right thing to do? With so many species and individual sentient beings living there, how will the environmental impact consider each of them? In addition to the birds, there are currently many animals living in the wetlands, like these tiny little super cute gray ground squirrels, and they are probably also food for the coyotes. I don't know how those little ground squirrels can stand up to a bulldozer, and all the other little animals that live underneath the ground. So what I understand is that the project proponents say they want to remove the concrete channels and replace them with earthen levees. But the fact is that the levees west of Lincoln are already earthen levees. They're not made of concrete. And that is why so many native marsh grasses grow there. And that's why it's a great place for the little plovers and the egrets and the blue heron rookeries. There's babies in there, very, very cool. And other animal communities live there. The levees continue to be an important place for all of the shorebirds, like the egrets, the great blue herons, even water birds like brown pelicans, which is a big thrill to me because I'm from a different part of the country where I'd never seen a pelican before. And you see them flying in these very cool formations that someone told me that's a squadron of pelicans. And I thought that was so apt and very cool. And I do see them often along the shore there. Even the 100 building savanna sparrows are awesome. And yes, my darling little plovers. So I'm just saying that it makes no sense to me to bulldoze the animals and the habitat that is already there. I do think the wetlands perhaps need more fresh water, but they don't need to be flooded with salt water, and they certainly don't need to be bulldozed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Colonel, thank you for being here. I'm really glad to see you here. Our Congress member has been working to try and get a meeting with you, with those of us who are leaders of the coalition called Protect Ballona Wetlands and Wildlife. And we would very much like to do that at some point with our Congressmember Liu. And I'm sure Congressmember Waters, who actually has half of the wetlands area, would love to have someone there too. The reason is we've heard that there were actually some big concerns in the Corps which held this project up for some time, and we'd like to know in more detail from some of your engineers what some of those concerns are and how they were resolved, etc. But you know, I keep seeing this new phrase that those who want to do this project are saying, "Bring back Ballona." And you know what? Ballona's back. Ballona is here. Reminds me of Make America Great Again. America's here. I mean, Ballona is here. And if you would look at Jonathan Coffin's Flickr page and look at all of the amazing photos of wildlife that he has taken over the last 10 years out there, you could in no way say or conclude that only 8% of the wetlands are even semi-functioning. That's what they're saying. It's just not true. And that's because there's a kind of a miscommunication or misunderstanding of what the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve is. It's a mosaic of different habitats. And ecological reserves are not necessarily all wetlands, and they're not all the same kinds of wetlands. There are wet meadows, there are seasonal ponds, there are freshwater wetlands. There are all kinds of different habitats out there. There are even non-native grasslands, which the California Department of Fish and Wildlife considers to be one of the most important and imperiled habitats in California. Not because of the non-native grass, but because of the native animals that use that habitat. And this is no different. That's why the great blue heron rookery is at risk if this project goes forward. Because the young herons that come out of the nests are actually in trees at Mariners Village, a residential area that's just filled with amazing big trees with herons, where the babies come out of the nest, and because those young herons don't know how to fish yet, it takes them a couple of years to learn refraction. And so they're going to survive. They have to eat the small mammals. And there are lots of small mammals out in Area A. Just walk around and you'll start falling into some of their holes. So it's really important that we look at the whole system. And I'd like to draw attention to a comic that was in the argument last week. It was really interesting. It had a bunch of doctors around a bed, and in the bed was the patient, the Ballona wetlands, looking like a bird. And it said, you know, the doctors were all arguing over what to do for the patient. The problem is that no one has said what is wrong with the patient. I haven't heard that from anybody. Everybody's suggesting, well, we have to put more salt water in and we have to take out the levees, but why? I sat through many, many, many technical scientific meetings when people were discussing this, and most of your agencies were not there, by the way. They were put together by private interests called the Bay Foundation, and at those meetings, they never said, what species are we managing for? Are we going to manage for any of the 9 endangered species that have been using these wetlands in the last 5 to 6 years? 9 endangered species? Or the dozens of species on the special concern list? Those are not covered well in your draft DIR at all. And so that would be the first question. Is what do we want to do for the least Bell's vireo? That because of the Great Recovery Plan that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has been doing down at Camp Pendleton, and those least Bell's vireos are starting to come north and expand their range, they started nesting here without any bulldozing. So what do we need to do to keep them coming here? That's the question we should be asking. And we're not focused on the wildlife, but we are focused on the wildlife. The people in our coalition are very focused on the wildlife. And Huey Johnson, who was a former resources secretary under Jerry Brown the first time, he asked me to give you his concern to let you know that he is strongly opposed to this and hopes that you will withdraw this project and reconsider the wildlife.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm Walter Lamb, the Ballona Wetlands Land Trust. We've been around since 1994, working to protect this ecosystem from encroachment. The first thing I would like to say is for everybody to take just a second to look around the room and see how packed it is, regardless of who wants alternative X and who wants alternative Y. This is a great showing, and I hope that the one takeaway that everyone leaves with tonight is this is a really important ecosystem, and it's a really beloved ecosystem by the public. So I'm really thrilled just to see the turnout generally. In terms of the draft AR, I also want to say I know a lot of work went into it. I mean, it's obviously been a long time. It's 8,000 pages. Clearly, there was a lot of effort. The California Environmental Quality Act, however, is a self-regulating statute that has certain criteria that have to be met. And we just objectively, our opinion is that those criteria have not been met. We have not formed an opinion yet as to what alternative we will or won't support. And we had expected this draft AR to provide a little bit more of an informational basis that we could really do sort of a weighing of the pros and the cons of the different alternatives. And we don't find that that's there. Specifically, under the current plan, on page 216 of the draft AR, Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve would become the first ecological reserve in the state to get a 3-story parking garage. And I've never in my life parked in a parking garage and taken an elevator down to the first floor to go hiking. So there's, again, just to stress, 138 ecological reserves across the state, not one has a 3-story parking garage. It's right there on page 216. It's in all 3 alternatives. And I'm a little disappointed to not hear more of the other groups speak up about that. That's something that we think is going to prevent this draft AR from becoming a final AR without revision. And I want to say it's not just the garage itself. The 2+ acres of existing paved parking was always intended to be temporary. The coastal development permit was, I think, given in 1988, and it was for approximately 5 years. So it's safe to say that that's well past its expiration date. I think, hopefully, all the environmental groups agree that this ecosystem is already too fragmented and too approached upon. We don't have the luxury of giving away 2 acres to parking, which, by the way, is for the commercial businesses across the street, and also some unrelated county agencies. So we need that land back. That's one thing I would say. I also think, again, without getting into the alternatives, because we haven't made a decision yet, it strikes us that 1, 2, and 3 is kind of like chocolate chip, and double chocolate fudge. And it's okay if you love chocolate. But what everyone needs to know is nobody's going to be eating any ice cream until this draft EIR is able to withstand a challenge. And again, CEQA is a self-governing statute. I know people say, oh, there's too much litigation. If we didn't have litigation related to CEQA in this state, we would have no CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. So I would ask folks to think about that also. The other thing I want to say is I'm a little concerned by this sort of American Idol approach to this, right? We have till February 5th, and thank you for the extension, to really delve into this and study. And I've been concerned by what comes across to me as sort of a commercial product launch. This isn't text, more people text 002 for alternative X or 003 for alternative Y. That's not how this works. So let's all get together, and if you're wearing a blue shirt, get together with somebody wearing, by the way, my green shirt is blank. It was a fashion choice, not a, I'm not with the bride or the groom tonight. But get together and talk through these things. There's some really interesting conversations to be had, and especially for students. This is an opportunity to really delve into the science and think not about a light switch, right, off or on, but like a plane cockpit. There's a lot of different little dials on there that we need to be paying close attention to. And if we have too much polarization, we're going to miss some really important things. So again, I'm with the Land Trust. If you want to form a study group, it doesn't matter what, if you're leaning this way or that way, let's talk through it and really take advantage of the time that we have to make sure that we get this right. Because this is a really important ecosystem. We can all take a breath and really see and try to map out the course that we're trying to take before we rush headlong, onto one bandwagon or another. Thank you. That's my comments for tonight.
Thank you, sir.
I'm tribal chair of the Gabalano Tonga Indians of California. I was born in Santa Monica and lived there, and in West Los Angeles and Westchester for most of my life. I have many ties to the land on which this project will take place. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about your proposed project regarding the 2 locations on your site that you have determined requires Native participation. LAN 54, or South Area C, on one of your maps states that the soil from 3 to 10 feet is field and therefore sterile. In 2002, I was appointed as the most likely descendant from the Native American Heritage Commission to take care of the human remains uncovered at approximately 2 feet from the surface. I required that there be no soil disturbances for a 50-foot diameter from the burial location due to the likelihood that there could be additional remains or cultural artifacts. Do you know that when that fill dirt was installed, and will you be standing out there? Let me repeat that again. That there could be additional remains in that same general area. And do you know that when that fill dirt was installed, and will you be staying out of the 50-foot diameter that was established as a no disturbance zone? LAN 47, or South Area B, on land currently used by Southern California Gas, includes a village site. As the most likely descendant for the Playa Vista property, which I was, this village was one of the sites I had suggested for reburial of the ancestors uncovered at Playa. In the 1980s, human remains were found scattered on the surface at this site. I'm making the point because it was not in the report. However, there are additional sites that must be considered due to sensitivity of the land, which is considered traditional cultural properties that are directly adjacent to this site and seem to have been overlooked. I'm sure it could be rectified. LAN 62, adjacent to the boundary of Southeast Area B, a member of the Lopez family that owned land nearby and close friends to our family observed pod hunters digging up artifacts out of the area west of Lincoln in 1946 and loading them into boxes. At a much later date, I was appointed the most likely descendant for this area. Playa Vista, or the village of Quashnock, where my grandmother, 3 generations removed, lived and may well have been buried there, is directly across Lincoln Boulevard from the wetlands. I was appointed the most likely descendant for the reburial of remains found on that site. LAN 63, LAN 64, directly adjacent to Southeast Area B. Both represent human remains that were uncovered at 2 feet and 3 feet below ground level. I was appointed as the most likely descendant for each of these ancestors. I'm hoping for the best results and the best methods used during the restoration. I love the wetlands and want everyone affiliated with this project to care as much as I do about this site. I think we're all in agreement about that.
I have a PhD and I have been a restoration ecologist for the past 27 years. I'm representing the Los Angeles Audubon Society. Margot Griswold, sorry. I would also say I'm a past president of the Society for Ecological Restoration, California. And under the definitions of restoration, none of the alternatives presented is in fact a restoration, nor a revitalization, nor even an enhancement. They are all creation, and that's not restoration. Because the project description is so narrowly drawn, I think it's a CEQA issue, that only an estuarine full tidal system will fit the project description, which requires creation, as this was not in the recent past a full tidal wetland. And to my point, we have brought this up time and again over the last 5 years. There's recent science to suggest, but is ignored, in the historical ecology of the BALLONA watershed, in the modeling for Central and Southern California estuarine systems, in deposition, and in recent work in from Bolsa Chica south of San Diego on what the state of coastal wetlands were over the last 100 years and what they are now. So coastal wetlands, as many of us in the room know, do not mean full tidal wetlands. There are many types of coastal wetlands. From Bolsa Chica down to San Diego Bay, they've systematically been reworked to be full tidal wetlands. They weren't before, but they are now. We have lost mainly salt pan habitat and brackish marsh, as well as freshwater marsh. The least loss was full tidal wetlands. However, in restoration, what is the most we've gained? Full tidal wetlands, and have homogenized the entire south coast. I would beg you to consider a more elegant plan for BALLONA, to not homogenize BALLONA into full tidal wetlands, to build berms, as Russ Frankel eloquently put it. Am I up?
You're up, ma'am.
Okay, well, let's restore BALLONA.
Thank you, Dr.
John Anthony Davis. First of all, the BALLONA wetlands are a freshwater environment, as can be seen from the historical photograph. This is not saltwater. The freshwater recharges the aquifers that have been designated by the state as a potential source of drinking water under the Porter-Cologne Act. People cannot drink saltwater in an emergency. You're not allowed to do this. It's a violation of Porter-Cologne. Ballona is not and was not filled with saltwater. Colonel Gibbs, as you well know, this project is within the geographic scope of an existing project authorized under Public Law 780, House Document 389. And it's impermissible for you to do this without first consulting Congress, as the Congress did request. As you can see, the map that was approved by Congress, the General Plan of Improvement for the project, encompasses the wetlands that you're proposing to bulldoze and destroy and turn into a saltwater environment that never existed before. As you also already know, Colonel Gibbs, since I brought this to your attention time and time again, the Congress has asked the Secretary of the Army to report back to it to determine if the Corps or if the Secretary has any recommendations on modifications of the project, including restoration and for storm control. However, the Secretary has never went back to Congress and has never gotten permission to change the project and modify it and restore it for stormwater purposes. So Colonel Gibbs, what I have to ask you is why on earth are you proposing to do something that's inconsistent with federal law when you're sworn to uphold it? And for fish and wildlife, I would like to know why you are actively draining the wetlands in contradiction to the Coastal Act, knowing that this will be on deck at the Coastal Commission in December. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. I am David DeLange. I'm the past president of Los Angeles Audubon, still on its board. This report fails to analyze or even disclose alternative 1 and 2's most significant tsunami risks. First risk, the proposed black-colored levee you see along Culver Boulevard, itself in yellow, creates a tsunami bottleneck because of the nearby Playa del Rey bluffs, around only 250 feet away. A tsunami of size would gather relentlessly in huge rising volumes along the west-looking bluffs and escape through this low-lying choke point, deluging Culver Boulevard, the designated tsunami escape route. Tsunami expert J.R. Wiggins, in his oft-cited LA City tsunami study, tells us that there's statistically a 100% probability of a 9.6-foot tsunami hitting Ballona during the next 100 years. It's not if, it's when. Second, the report neither analyzes nor discloses the more specific effects of tsunamis created by nearby earthquakes, for example, along the Santa Monica Bay faults. The possibly resulting liquefaction caused by the shaking could cause the sinking of this levee here, along which people will be escaping if there's a tsunami on the pedestrian and bicycle pathways. The stronger the levee is made by heavy armoring materials, the greater will be its fall. And then sea rise has never been added to the analysis of these two problems I've just indicated. It amplifies the problem. I walked the desolation of Sendai, Japan in 2012. You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. Thank you, sir.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Mark Salzberg. I guess what I want to say starts with the word, what we're considering, which is Ballona wetlands restoration. And the problem with that is the word restoration. As Margot Griswold and several others have already alluded to, restoration would be to something that existed in the past. I want to quote from a report that is on the Ballona, it's on the doc.ballonarestoration.org site. It's called Ballona Historic Ecology Report 2011. It says, our data suggests that at most times there was only moderate or no tidal influence, and the area was dominated by freshwater inputs from the watershed. So the very report that defines the starting point of what you want to restore to says it's not a tidal system. The problem here is that you've got to have, in order to judge degradation, you have to have 2 points. You have to have the point of origin, and you have to have the point of what you're comparing to today. The problem with this restoration is they've selected the wrong point of origin. It's as simple as that. And because they are trying to restore to that point of origin, the EIR is flawed to a point where it can no longer stand. So that's my comment on the content. I see I'm out of time. I'd only like to say we need more time.
I'm Catherine Tyrrell. I am a board member and also the past president of the Friends of BALLONA Wetlands. And I'm also a very proud member of the Wetlands Restoration Principles Coalition Steering Committee. And I wanted to note that that group has at least, just the steering committee, at least 25,000 people that it represents. So it's a very significant group. While professionally my expertise has been in the field of environmental policy and stormwater quality, today I speak as a 30-year resident of this area, Playa del Rey and Playa Vista. And I am very aware that much of what is called the Ballona wetlands is not really wetlands at all, but merely fields of non-native vegetation with little to no tidal flow and certainly inadequate public access. I completely support the goals of the Wetlands Principles Coalition Steering Committee that were developed specifically for Ballona. We focused on increased sustainable habitat acreage and quality. We focused on increased tidal flows that are balanced with functioning ecosystem, and we focused on increasing public access that is compatible with habitat protection. After reviewing the document for the last 6 weeks, the coalition finds that the elements of Alternative 1 and 2 will likely be the most successful in meeting these goals and bringing back Ballona. The no project alternative is really an absolute no-starter. You've heard other people talk about that. And while I personally love freshwater systems, like the mechanically sculpted freshwater marsh at Ballona, the dredge-filled and weed-infested Area A is totally isolated from any former watershed, and talk of it being a freshwater system is really meritless, as discussed in an alternative that is presented in the draft EIR-EIS. However, some details for solid decision-making in the draft document are lacking. For instance, the placement of fill from Area A is assigned to the alternatives in a manner which seems to reduce the wetland acreage in Alternative 2, but is not necessarily an attribute of only that alternative. We also see that details and mitigation are lacking and would want to see very complete mitigation plans moving forward. But thank you very much on behalf of the Friends and the Coalition, and bring back Ballona. Thank you.
Kathy Knight. I've been volunteering for the past 20 years to get this land saved and to protect the wildlife and the plants on this land. I really want to see a freshwater alternative study. I can't believe it wasn't even studied. And we really, really, really need to see that so we can talk back and forth. What's the benefit? What's the down? It's basically, from everything I've ever seen in the last 25 years, it's a freshwater wetland. And we have the whole Ballona watershed there. It goes down into there. And I have pictures. I gave you each a letter that you will get at some point. I handed it in tonight, showing all the fresh water in there. Playa Vista had tons of water over there, frogs over there. We really need freshwater wetlands, as you've heard tonight. They're all being turned into saltwater wetlands. We really need to save freshwater wetlands for frogs that are not doing well on the planet, for the birds that migrate along here. And we can clean up the water in Biona Creek, bring it back in. The wetland just needs water. It's been dry lately in terms of rainfall, and it needs the Biona cleaned up water from Biona Creek coming back into it, and it'll do a lot of restoration itself. Also, we don't want to see I don't want to see bulldozing. It's killing a lot of the wildlife. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife has life at the end of it. I don't want to see animals killed. And also, there needs to be a hydrology study. I've been told that Playa Vista is pumping a lot of water out daily, and it's just going into the ocean. How much water is being pumped out, and why isn't that water going back into the wetlands? So we need to do that. And this project, the alternatives that you come up with, look more like a flood control project for Playa Vista with 20-foot berms that people wouldn't even be able to see into the wetlands. So this doesn't make sense. And Area A dredging, I've talked to people that have studied that history over there, and
Time's up, man.
it's just fill. It's not from Marina Del Rey. They use that dirt to make Marina Del Rey taller so they can build buildings. That is not dredge from Marina Del Rey.
My name is Ben Hamilton, and I am a biologist, have been all my life. My father took me out when I was 2.5, 3 years old, barely walking, to show me the Pacific Flyway when half of the sky in the east would turn black every morning for 3 or 4 hours. And that was 5 miles east of Paso Robles. We have not discussed economics here, but an important part of the economics of this area is ecotourism. I brought that up at a meeting today at 1 o'clock with one of the people that is contributing to this, and it's an important issue. Ecotourism in California is huge, as is the sports fishing industry and the tax revenue that's generated all through the state. Regarding this EIR-EIS project and the proposal, I think that option 4 is the only sensible option at this time. Now, I think that the proposal should be withdrawn, and it should be withdrawn without putting that S-curve or doing extensive soil removal with equipment. Now, I always say, if you're going to restore an area, restore it personally, and use a pick and shovel or small equipment if you have to. And people say, well, you can't do this by hand. They built the Great Wall of China by hand. They built the pyramids by hand. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Catherine Campbell. I am a local resident. I am also an LA County Beach Commissioner, although I am speaking tonight on my own behalf. There are dozens of species that are endangered, threatened, or of special interest to federal and state conservators that are utilizing Biona today. Several people, even those that are in favor of some of these plans, have expressed concern about the lack of detail regarding mitigation. I noticed that the mitigation states that, quote, attempts will be made to salvage species. That seems woefully inadequate given the importance of these species and the dwindling corridors of habitat nearby. It's hard to even imagine what kind of process would have to be in place to actually safeguard all of these species for the years that it will take to first completely renovate this area and then for the subsequent habitats to become established. Until those details are provided to us, I don't feel that we can in good conscience say that we are providing the least environmentally damaging alternative to something that which is supposed to be an ecological reserve.
My name is Jackson Garland. It's JACKSONGARLAND. And while today is my 16th birthday, I am here to share something much more important to me, you, and the environment: the slow destruction of Biona wetlands. The wildlife and lands in Ballona wetlands must be protected. We do not live in this land, the birds of Ballona do. We already have too many stories about people losing their homes due to natural disasters. We can't let this happen to animals that live there. At least humans have the ability to rebuild or move to a motel, but once animal habitat is destroyed, they have nowhere else to go. Just like Oxford Lagoon, there was a restoration project. The government decides to remove any non-native trees because they claim that the trees were diseased. Those have been there for over 50 years and were vital nesting areas for some endangered birds and the monarch butterfly. When they began this construction, herons were displaced and traumatized from this greedy act. They say as you don't learn about history, even this recent event, it is bound to repeat itself. The environment is home for all, not something to take advantage of. We must preserve this land for future generations. Give you some pictures of birds that live in the Ballona wetlands.
My name is Patricia McPherson. I'm president of Grassroots Coalition. And I would like to say that we are in support of all of the groups that are here tonight wearing the green shirts. I'd like to let you know that but for these groups, but for us, and in front of you there is a document there that shows there was a 1990 settlement agreement with the Friends of Ballona, which they were able to achieve, thankfully, what is now the catch basin portion of Playa Vista's flood control system, which, as Ms. Turrell said, that was your project, I believe, also. And she does work and has worked for Playa Capital, which I'm sure all of you are very aware of how political, highly politicized this site.
It's a wonderful community. Thank you.
Excuse me, please don't interrupt.
We didn't interrupt you. Take your time back.
Could I, yeah,
Take your
have the time back?
Please take some 10 seconds. Go ahead, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Ma'am, go ahead.
All right. But for us, this land wouldn't be up for restoration in the first place. Because building and safety, because of the gas issues that we unveiled there, they learned that this area had huge volumes of underground oil field gas and SoCal gas operation problems there. Building and safety stated that nothing could be developed residentially west of Lincoln Boulevard. And that is why we have this land. Area C was done in a land swap, and I thank the Friends for the catch basin, but the rest of this is because of these people that are here, and we have donated our time. Ballona, got started in this, the Army Corps got started in this, by the way, I am 5 minutes, I believe I am an organization. The Army Corps got started in this back in 2005. It was supposed to follow an iterative process, which meant look at all the reasonable alternatives. Here we have Ballona wetlands is a predominantly seasonal freshwater wetlands. And Margot Griswold and other scientists that have come up here, we've already had the evidence proven through the studies paid for with public bond money to show that that is the history of this area. So when the Army Corps now, from the 2005 to the 2012 process, which I would like to see an audit done of that, because I've seen the documents from the closeout, and the closeout doesn't match anything having to do with Ballona for many of those documents. Number two, when the Corps got involved, as you said tonight, you got involved in a permit process only. It was dropped out. And why were you dropped out? I've seen the internal emails, because unfortunately, instead of doing what the bonds asked for and told us we would get, was lots of meetings to be able to have cross-communication, to be able to dialogue with all of you. We never had that. We've had instead to use PRAs, Public Record Act requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, in order to get any information. I have the documentation of the Coastal Conservancy, the contracts that specifically say
it has to be estuarine gold. That is not an iterative process. That's a predetermined goal. And the start of the Army Corps' information was all based on private business, the Bay Foundation's documents provided to you, that the county didn't even get involved in this with the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission as it was supposed to be, because the commission didn't even know that it was involved in this. So the whole WRDA process is fraudulent at this point. I want to go back on a couple of things because I am totally off script here, but I want to remind you, House Document 389, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It talks about Marina Del Rey, 34 million cubic yards were slurried along 5.5 miles of coastline from El Segundo to Ocean Park to widen the beach 500 feet. The Del Rey harbor maps show part of that 34 million to create the actual moles that everything is built on there now. The idea, and Area A is in the front of that document that I just gave you. The documents within this DEIR, DEIS, there are many that are false, there are many that are misleading, including with regard to Area A. There are raised roadways around there, but that salt pan area that you see in that document that actually Friends of Iona put out saying, oh, it looks pretty bad, is actually a very special area. It is the historic salt pan area that Dr. Margot Griswold was discussing. Those are creatures that use it, and if you look to the right, that is Ballona Wetlands. It is an area that ponds with fresh water every time we get rains, because where is the water table? The water table is 5 feet below in that area, according to borings done recently for soil sampling. We have no hydrology reports on Ballona. Why is that? Could it be because Playa Vista needs to de-water in order to get rid of all of the water? And if you dig this land out, it will cause a drain. Because why is Fish and Game draining the wetlands on behalf of Playa Vista? Why is Fish and Game allowing Playa Vista to divert all of the groundwaters that historically flow to Playa Vista?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I think what we really learned tonight is everybody has a lot of ideas of what should be done, things that haven't been done right or whatever. So what the main thing is, we all have to come together and figure this out. Because the bottom line is, for me as a common, just going by common sense, is that I think we do need to create, by restoring the habitable area, by giving more habitable area for the wildlife to thrive. It doesn't mean doing nothing, and it doesn't mean choosing a slow handheld method. It means figuring out, I'm going to assume a bulldozer, a safe way of phasing this in and doing it the right way. And finding the right way with all parties in agreement. Bulldozing is not a bad word when it will help the future of the Ballona wetlands. Right now, the wetlands, a lot of them, are underneath a bunch of dirt. They're not wetlands now, and they need to be revealed. So let's get the plans together, find the best one, and save Ballona wetlands. Thank you.
My name is James Almio. I've been a resident in the area for the last 48 years. Previously worked at Bay for 25 years, so quite familiar with this area. And I'm here just to stand in support of the wetlands restoration principles, the idea that we can bring back Ballona using sound science, robust science. We've seen this play out most recently up in Malibu Creek watershed, where we've seen actual improvements in both water quality, the diversity in the plant, the diversity in the flora and fauna associated with that type of restoration. This cannot be done handheld. There's going to be some mechanical need in order to meet the 600 acres plus that we're going to need to restore over time. This can't be done, as someone previously stated, with hands. We don't have that kind of labor. It doesn't exist. And we don't have that kind of time frame in which to bring these wetlands back. And more importantly, we are supportive of options or alternatives 1 and 2 because they bring the biggest diversity possible, as well as, and more importantly, I think, or most importantly, is access to the area, which is desperately needed in the green spacing and the bringing back of the environment to LA. Thank you very much for the time.
Open up
My name is Meredith McCarthy. I'm Director of Programs at Gila Bay. I have just 3 points. Thank you, Fish and Game, for the Newport Back Bay. I'm exceedingly excited that we have a future of interpretive opportunities here. And I think that based on the similar size area, I am looking forward to a significant emphasis placed on interpretive opportunities to bring the 11 million people in the region, give some of them an opportunity to come visit this incredibly special place. Right now, to have 600 acres paid for by the state, by state taxpayers that have no access to it currently is unacceptable, which is why no alternative is absolutely unacceptable. As Heat Island heats up the inner communities, the need to find rest and coolness at the coast is going to be ever so much more important. And being able to greet them, visitors that come here, is going to be very, very important. Ballona is not here yet. 3% of functioning wetlands is not an acceptable number. I'm sort of struck, having been at Gila Bay for a long time, so many of the groups here today were so anti-freshwater when the freshwater marshes was being built, and now we're having this sudden mad love affair with fresh water. So I'm intrigued by that. I'm looking forward to a fully functioning 500-acre wetlands. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Catherine Pease, and I'm the watershed scientist at Gila Bay. Gila Bay has joined forces with other influential environmental groups through the steering committee of the Wetlands Restoration Principles Coalition to advocate for a robust restoration of the Ballona wetlands. We are thrilled that the long-awaited restoration for Ballona wetlands is finally underway, and we see real promise in alternatives 1 and 2 for the opportunity to bring back Ballona to a healthy and functioning ecosystem. We will continue to analyze this dense document, and we will submit detailed written comments by February 5th. The Ballona wetlands are not back. They are in trouble and need our help. Today, functioning wetlands make up only 3% of the reserve, and this is based on sound science. Realizing this restoration plan will increase those numbers, and much of the wetlands will become wet again. The plan has clear goals on good science and many years of research. To achieve increased biodiversity, we need to remove much of the 3 million cubic yards of sediment that are covering the wetlands. We need to remove the concrete levees that, along Ballona Creek to reconnect the creek to its floodplain. Restoration will be done carefully to protect and minimize any negative impacts to animals. These actions will make room for native species that depend on wetlands and bring the possibility that rare and endangered species will once again return to the area. The City of LA recently passed an initiative aimed at understanding and promoting biodiversity. The Ballona Restoration Project is in line with this initiative and will be a great example of a positive way to increase biodiversity, with benefits to be felt for generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ann Tyler. I've lived in Playa del Rey for 19 years now. I pass by the Ballona wetlands nearly every day. It's a vibrant ecosystem. I see the animals living there. I've also taken time to tour Ballona and learn more about the special environment that exists there. The proposed plans to change that environment will kill so many animals, including the endangered species that were supposed to be protected there. There'll be death by bulldozer, and for those not killed by the bulldozers, those animals will be displaced. Their old homes simply won't be there anymore, and many won't be able to find another habitat that can sustain them. That would be animal cruelty on a massive scale. and I strongly oppose it. On a slightly different note, I'd like to add my name to those who have been asking for a public comment period that is a full 180 days. The draft EIR-EIS is a massive document. We, the people, expect and have a right to know what's in it before it's acted upon. It's unrealistic and unfair for you to demand that we come to that kind of knowledge in less than 180 days. And also for transparency's sake, there should be at least 2 more public hearings like this so all of us who are concerned about this project can express our concerns and get our questions answered. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Good evening.
Lisa, L-A-S-A, Schwab, S-C-H-W-A-B, like boy. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in what we feel is a very important moment in our community's history. As a former 14-year resident of Playa del Rey and a local restaurant owner since 1999, I have long dreamt of a more collaborative and mutually beneficial relationship with the wetlands. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't take a deep breath of gratitude that I have the privilege of owning a business that borders such a rare and precious reserve. I am a native Californian and am very familiar with the historic use of much of the land. It once contained a motor dome, a stable, and unfortunately, a dumping ground for the Marina Channel dredging. We all have witnessed that the miracles of nature are often resilient and self-generating. We hope that during this discussion regarding public access, you would recognize that there are parcels that, if used responsibly, could be used by the public in a way that helps contribute to much-needed infrastructure. We appreciate any consideration to provide more parking, especially along Culver Boulevard. This area has magnificent possibilities for both the community of Playa del Rey and the visitors we hope to support. Playa del Rey lacks significant infrastructure, especially parking. We're very concerned about losing the small amount of public parking we now share, specifically the parking lot behind Gordon's Market. Closing this lot at dusk will have a devastating effect on our community. We respectfully ask that you consider an alternative such as closing this lot at midnight. With your help, we could make Playa del Rey a destination, the gateway to Ballona Wetlands. We support a full and vibrant restoration that strikes a healthy balance between nature and commerce. A restored Ballona is good for our community, our precious wildlife, and our local businesses. I thank you for your consideration.
Hello, I'm Melissa von Meyerhauser, the Watershed Programs Manager at Los Angeles Waterkeeper, and we are part of the Waterkeeper Alliance as well as a member of the Wetlands Restoration Principles Coalition here tonight. And we will be submitting more detailed comments later with the coalition, but we really appreciate the chance tonight to highlight a few key thoughts at this moment. We would like to see a project that prioritizes nature-based solutions that connect with the larger Ballona Creek watershed while enhancing community involvement along the way. So we are in favor of improving tidal circulation, removing concrete levees, and reconnecting the creek with its historic floodplain to reestablish a natural ecosystem with greater biodiversity. We see multiple benefits in terms of improving conditions for fish spawning habitat, increasing infiltration by slowing the flow of the creek, and mitigating the impacts of sea level rise. While we agree with the overarching premises of alternatives 1 and 2 and the need for intensive restoration, we would like to see a plan that increases public access in harmony with nature-based restoration goals without using hardscape, incorporates community involvement in the restoration process, and finally leads to more self-sustaining, naturally connected habitats in the wetland and creek in the context of the watershed. Thank you so much.
I'm Bruce Campbell. Please extend this comment period well into March 2018 on the DEIR-DEIS. So I went on a guided walk in Parcel A several weekends ago, and it was pointed out that there are many non-native, that even though there were a number of native plants, that there were many non-native plants in the area due to disturbances. Speaking of disturbances, if you bulldoze and resculpt for a decade, is that a disturbance? And then the invasive plants would be flocking in, and then you'd be getting out the herbicides. So, There were likely 0 people in the room that hammered out the $139 million BALLONA acquisition deal who visualized bulldozing the vast majority of what they were acquiring. Please choose a no-action alternative and do not reduce habitat types in the BALLONA ecosystem. This is not a restoration. It is odd that a 19th century BALLONA alternative was rejected as an alternative, yet the national alternative basically likes the habitat around the time of Christ in this area. I'm concerned that the so-called upland habitat is not really habitat, since berms will be poisoned to get rid of gophers and snakes, and that will negatively impact birds and coyotes. I'm concerned that long-term vegetation management will involve toxic herbicides, which will have a negative impact on water quality and various species. A new founder and executive director of Heal the Bay, Dorothy Green, who told me early on that Heal the Bay decided to stay out of BALLONA wetlands issues. She would roll in her grave if she knew that Heal the Bay was backing a decade's worth of bulldozing at BALLONA in order to get some monitoring grants. I went to the first Restoring the Earth conference at UC Berkeley in 1988. The infamous David Brower spoke there and said it is important to restore, but we must make sure to save genetic pieces to have any clue how to restore. There is serious discussion, even by LA City Councilmember Bonin, of shutting down the Playa natural gas field, yet this was not recognized in the DEIR-DEIS, which has alternatives to assure that this dangerous facility can operate for decades and do slant drilling and other problems. So we also need a freshwater alternative, but the best thing offered is a no-action alternative. Thank you.
I'm Cindy Harden, and I too would like to see the comment period extended to at least March 2018. I work and live in Playa del Rey. I actually work for Los Angeles Audubon Society. I coordinate school tours and public tours once a month at the wetlands in Area B. And in Area B, I see lots and lots of life. Historic tea sheets from the 19th century show fresh water throughout the wetlands. There are willow stands. There's still a freshwater spring in front of the bed and breakfast in the probably 400 or 500 block of Color Boulevard that every year ponds throughout the winter season. There are tadpoles using that freshwater spring. I would like to see more freshwater in the wetlands, an alternative that offers that possibility. I also believe that Area A is functioning. There are many upland plants established there, coyote brush, laurel sumac, among others. I see California thrashers in there, an upland species, meadowlarks, and that too, ponds in the winter time where little small invertebrates, bottom of the food chain, essential, like ostracods that have insisted and remained dormant when the land is dry, come back to life when that fresh water forms there and collects there during the rainy season. This estuary has been a primarily closed system for hundreds of years, and so to call this a restoration, by definition, would make that incorrect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Emily Kobar. I've led school field trips to inner city students through Los Angeles Audubon as well. And every time I'm in the wetlands, there's always an interesting story. One of my favorites is when my group and I observed a great blue heron sneakily eat a legless lizard, a southern legless lizard. And although that lizard is a species of special concern, it was super cool for the young students to see that predator-prey action. The people have fought for the wetlands before and succeeded in saving it. Many years later, we are here to keep that habitat for wildlife. Yes, we should maintain the land by removing invasive plants like the castor bean and the chrysanthemum to have more space and resources for the native plants and the wildlife. I've had my share in habitat restoration since 11th grade of high school, throughout college and post-college, and I can tell you that you do not need a bulldozer for that. It can be done, and we should think of the tiny and the large critters that call it a home. If it took 8 or so years to work on the report, the environmental impact report, I think we're patient enough to restore that habitat without such heavy machinery. Thank you.
I'm Jeanette Bosford. I'd like to make 2 points. I've heard a lot about 97% of the wetlands are degraded. Why are we kind of stuck on 97%? I'd like to read something. This is an email from the former executive director of the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission, aka Bay Foundation. It says, "Hi Mary," and this is very small. "I think the presentation looks good. I think we should include some comparative data, e.g. the seed bank data and the exotic veg data." But she goes on to say, and this is where I have a little bit of a problem. She said, "I saw what Karina sent you, and it doesn't help us. We need numbers like 99% invasive plants and lowest seed bank of anywhere in Southern California. I wonder why, unless we're supporting a Playa Vista flood control project in the way that they see it." I put out these flyers. There's a little picture there of a duck, and I think most people have this. And the point that I would like to make with this is that I'm not asking you to accept anything that I say. I'm asking you to go and look at the key references on the back and find out for yourself what this means. Also, check out flickr.com /Stoneberg. That will show you, regardless of what anyone in this room says, thousands of pictures that have been taken in the Ballona wetlands. Thank you.
I'm a local resident. As someone in touch with some of those who have been dedicated for decades trying to preserve and help this area we're in contest about, it seems to me that restoration of Ballona was never considered in what we're dealing with. But how to receive what powerful financial interests wanted was. What they wanted was carefully thought out and strategized. A plan to create a saltwater marsh with high berms to protect Playa Vista from possible tsunamis and conceal the ugly remains of what had been a delicate functioning wetland. First, it was announced by one of the so-called environmental groups that Ballona was seriously degraded, which it wasn't. This, after some of us here were prevented from actually going on the marsh to help with maintenance. Then a, quote, scientific study was funded by special interests, a study confined to the creation of what they wanted all along. Not at all a restoration. Never providing any adequate consideration or real concern for the loss of wildlife, the loss of a valuable resource. Thank you.
I was a resident from Marina Del Rey for 20 years and I'm a local business owner. Over the past years, myself, family, local neighbors, and concerned citizens attended meetings such as this over the development of Marina Del Rey. We listened to the county environment and traffic reports and we're told it's all going to be okay. I stand before you today and tell you it's not all okay. In the short term, while construction is going on in the marina, there is noticeable negative impact on the local community and environment. In the long term, when the thousands of new construction units come online, the traffic, safety of the community, and impact on the environment will be punitive and not recoverable. I'm glad the Army Corps of Engineers is a decision maker here in this process. That is, as it is my hope that reasonable judgment will be applied to the Ballona wetlands, as we are not getting good judgment from our local officials. Rather we see development of the marina, Playa del Rey, and Ballona wetlands as another revenue stream for the county. I'd like to have my daughter say a few words.
Hi, my name is Avalon Garland. I want to share my experience from when the Oxford Lagoon was being renovated. There were beautiful 50-year-old trees that they swallowed down. They swallowed down huge trees that monarch butterflies lived in. It was very sad. It happened days before Christmas. Because of this, so much wildlife was displaced. We woke up to 30 snowy egrets on our patio on Christmas Day. They were panicked, sad, and disoriented because their home was destroyed. If they do this at Ballona Wetlands, so many more animals will lose their homes. It will be destroyed so much nature without places for them to go.
So I'm Jackson Garland's mom, and it's Beth Holden of Hyphenate Garland. We lived in the marina for 25 years, and Biona's always been an important, touchstone for us. We've enjoyed the wildlife, but from the great blue heron to the many varieties of birds there. And it's amazing to see, if you live locally, how interconnected all of the land and trees and wildlife are to each other. The heron needs the trees in Mariners Village to be able to hold their nests. They get the straw from Ballona. They hunt on the lagoon. They hunt on land, and all of this is really interconnected. And over the years, I've gone to Ballona and visited, and it always takes my breath away, like how much beautiful flowers are there. Things from owls and butterflies and dragonflies. And if you look at Jonathan Coffin's photos that we gave to you, I mean, it's amazing, the diversity of species there. And I think our family, we just are really touched, and we're really concerned about this, we've seen what they did at Oxford Lagoon. If something's done, these animals will be displaced. It was terribly sad. And I have to say, this man that spoke earlier from the Tonga tribe was really touched. I mean, there were burial grounds there as well. And we went to a dinner for Ballona maybe 2 years back, and Congresswoman Maxine Waters spoke, and she said, "Why are we messing with these grounds? These are burial grounds." And I think there needs to be, extra consideration. We have this park at the end of Santa Monica Pier that's acknowledging the importance of that tribe and the heritage of it. I think we need to treat their memory more importantly. So.
Dr. K. Good evening. My name is David Kay, K-A-Y. I live in Playa Vista. Soldier, thank you for your service. You must be wondering, WTF is this all about? Ruth, thank you for your service. We love you. In the Ballona DEIR, only alternative number 1, the full tidal restoration plan, accomplishes all of the goals established for Ballona through 17 years and counting of public dialogue. Any choice other than alternative number 1 falls short and is settling for half a loaf rather than reaching for the whole. I urge you to not only move forward with alternative number 1, but choose it as the environmentally preferred alternative. You can only create tidal wetlands within reach of the tide. A decade ago, a team of scientists, planners, engineers, and constructors created, enhanced, and restored 440 acres of tidal wetlands and upland habitats near Del Mar, known as the San Dieguito Wetlands Restoration Project. Historically, tidal wetlands gradually filled in for an airfield, cultivation, and grazing, crisscrossed by roads and other infrastructure, bisected by a major flood-controlling river channel, and hemmed in by suburban development. San Dieguito had everything in common with Ballona, and so is an excellent example of how full tidal restoration would proceed here today. I know you know how that project turned out, and that you studied San Dieguito's lessons learned, because those lessons are pervasive throughout your Biona project DEIR. Well done. Move forward with alternative number 1. Bring back Biona. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sue Hershop, and I'm representing the Villa Marina neighborhood, which shares a border with Area C North. One of the items from the draft report that concerns us is the large amount of soil that would be excavated from Area A and moved into Area C North. The report states that the plan is to add 15 to 30 feet above existing grade to this area, with some diagrams indicating 35 feet. This seems excessive. Our specific concerns include, number 1, destruction of the current ecosystem. How will the existing plants and wildlife survive being covered with 30 feet of soil? Will the wildlife be forced into our neighborhood after their habitat is upended, and if not, where would they go? Number 2, the sheer volume of soil. 30 feet of soil will literally tower over our neighborhood of 2-story townhomes. Our current view of the area is that in an open field with views toward Playa Vista, the Playa Bluffs, and the marina. It appears that with this project, our view of the area will become the side of a 30-foot mound of dirt. Number 3, drainage. We are unable to determine how water will drain or where it will be collected after rainstorms. Many of our residents currently experience problems with groundwater seepage in their garages, requiring sump pumps and French drains to keep their property dry. Our question is, will the plan make this problem worse? Finally, our properties currently share a low cinder block retaining wall. Who owns this wall, and will it remain or be removed and or replaced? We are not opposed to restoration of this area, but would like to ensure that our neighborhood is not overshadowed by excessive filth that negatively impacts the environment or our residents' quality of life. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrea Leon Grossman. I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch. And first I want to read the description and the definition of restoration, and that's the action of returning something to a former owner, place, of condition. This wetland belongs to the people. It does not belong to Sulphide Gas. And right now, the only heavy machinery that belongs in that wetland is the one that will remove that gas storage facility that is poisoning our community. There's a Sulphide Gas employee that already raised concerns for catastrophic loss of life. And that goes for not just the wildlife that lives there, for everyone in this room and in this city. And we need to get rid of that dirty energy that endangers our life. So I am concerned not just for the wildlife, but for everyone, and especially for our brothers and sisters who are natives and for those burial grounds there. And again, I also want to quote Einstein. If you can explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Follow the money. Anyone here in that position?
Being here, my name is Douglas Fay. I'm the grandson of Raymond Lorraine Fay, who was a member of the pioneering Ocean Fish Protective Association here in the Santa Monica Bay. I'm the son of the late Dr. Raymond C. Fay, the marine scientist who had 2 PhDs, one in oceanography and one in chemistry, who fought to save the Biona wetlands, who fought the Hyperion expansion, who fought and stopped Montrose from dumping DDT into the Santa Monica Bay. I submitted to you during the scoping process a letter with many questions, and I expected that to be before me in the EIR, and it's not there. I'm lost. This is a secret process. You should be answering the questions that I asked so I know how to continue in this process. In that letter, which you all should have read, was also referenced the open enclosure dynamics of coastal estuaries by Dr. Travis Longcore, which clearly shows that the Biona wetlands was a freshwater wetlands. Okay, that's the base point. So you've got honesty that this needs to be a freshwater restoration, and you've got dishonesty that this is a fully titled project restoration, which it is not. It is not. And I'm not against restoring the Ballona wetlands. We've been here, part of it, for 4 generations. My father was an independent scientist. He wrote that draft draft proposal for a restoration here. He was adamant that the restoration could be done mainly by hand, removing invasive species. He was also adamant that you do not open the Ballona Creek to the wetlands until all of the toxic synthetic compounds that are currently going out of the creek do not enter that wildlife area. And the big elephant in the room is 1 trillion gallons of sewage and toxins are getting dumped into the Santa Monica Bay every 4 years.
Thank you, sir.
That means you have to look at this as a cumulative problem. The county...
Sir, your time is up. Thank you.
The Marina Del Rey Harbor is an impaired water body. That needs to be corrected before you can even consider doing a project here. And I would love to talk to you further on this subject.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Searcy. I'm a staff scientist for Heal the Bay, an organization that represents tens of thousands of Angelinos and is a member of the Wetlands Restoration Principal Committee. Tonight I am speaking to you just as a resident of Venice, a surfer, and a nature lover. I want to start by thanking the Army Corps and DFW staff. We're excited to see this project finally move forward, and I trust that a rigorous science-based alternative will be employed to restore Ballona to a healthy state. Tonight I kind of want to just talk a little bit about what's important to me personally, and that is the connection between nature and human beings. We're running out of places where we can just sit and be and listen to the birds and just the birds and smell native plants and flowers and just the native plants and flowers. Instead, we're kind of left to live in a box that's completely paved over and overrun by swarms of automobiles and shadowed by advertisements on billboards. We know that doing nothing will have severe consequences for Ballona and all those people that want to interact with it. Invasive plants have spread to much of the wetlands and continue to do so. Climate change and the resultant sea level rise pose a great threat to it. So let's nurture what we have and support it. Let's help give Ballona a chance. A robust restoration of Ballona will improve the habitat for native plants and wildlife. It'll improve water quality for fish, and it'll improve access for those who need to taste the nature that I was talking about. Doing nothing is not an option. Please bring back Ballona. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Reich. I'm president of Progressive Democrats of the Santa Monica Mountains, and I'm also a member of the LA County Democratic Party Central Committee. And so I guess I represent more people tonight than anybody else here in the room, because I represent the Democrats of Los Angeles County. And the Democrats of Los Angeles County voted to oppose this project many months ago when it first came to our attention. And let me just say for me personally, animals and birds and plants have a right to exist on their own. They're not there to entertain us. They are there for themselves, and they have a right to the habitat they want. We saw what they did in Malibu, and Malibu is never going to recover. But now it has metal umbrellas and all kinds of other obscene things instead of the plants and the animals that were there. And I'll mention one more thing with no disrespect intended. We remember New Orleans and remember the Army Corps of Engineers. And it terrifies me to think that you will destroy our wetlands, and when the sea levels rise, they'll come flooding over the wetlands into the populated areas. We need to leave our wetlands the way they are.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Murillo. I'm wearing my Tree People t-shirt because I'm a volunteer supervisor with them. I'm not speaking on behalf of them, but just from, I care about, I get out there and I plant trees and I do maintenance all over the county and care very deeply about the environment. I am a member of the Sierra Club Ballona Wetlands Restoration Committee. And we are in support of a gentle restoration. And to one point about there needing to be more water in the wetlands, I have a big problem with the draining of the wetlands, and I think that if we stop draining water out of the wetlands, we'd probably have more, it'd be wet, okay? So, and I have a problem with the idea, I understand that they talk about caging all of the animals in the 600-acre and removing them. And then remove them to where? You know, and then we're going to have 10 years of this project going on, and where are they all going to go? The ones that don't get caged, they escape, you know. This is just unreal that we're going to deal with 10 years of removal of these animals. And the people who live in Playa del Rey should be really concerned about all the dust and all the crap that's going to be in the air from bulldozing all those years. Think about that, and in Del Rey too. I live in Marina Del Rey where there's a bunch of apartments going up. I got dust throughout my apartment, on my car. It's awful. You'd be living with 10 years of that. So think about that. The residents are close by. Lastly, I'd like to, and also, why don't other people have access to the Ballona wetlands? Only Friends has access. Why don't they open the gate so we can all go in there? Why is only one group allowed in there? So that's my question.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we need 180 days to review this. 8,000 pages, 8 years of working on this. We need more time to have experts really go through this. It's just ridiculous in a short period of time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is June Walden. I was born and raised on the west side of Los Angeles. I remember when I was a little kid, my dad used to take me down to the puddles that were down here, and I used to play in. So I've been here a long time. I drove up the hill to go to work in Westchester for 20 years and looked at 2 lots at the corner of Lincoln and Jefferson that were fallow fields. Occasionally you would see a bird in it. Okay? Well, when I retired, I knew that I was not going to last because I like to teach people and I taught little kids. And so I came down here. For 17 years, I've been a docent. I work with students of all ages. I work with adults. Okay, I love it here. I've seen a lot of changes. First of all, I'd like to say, once I was asked on a tour, why don't you restore it like it used to be? And I said, okay, fine. Let's just take out all the man-made structures, everything between here and the beginning of the watershed. Let it sit around for a couple thousand years, and we'll restore it. Not possible. We've got roads, we've got people, my house, okay? So, we've got 610 acres. What do we do with it? I have always said, and I've gone to a lot of meetings, we do the very, very best we can with the very, very best science for the animals and for the people. Now, if you look at the 2 lots up at Lincoln and Jefferson, fallow, a vibrant freshwater marsh, that was bulldozed, because that's one of those. That's one of those buzzwords that's being thrown around here. Get everybody in uproar. It's going to be terrible. We all know that very successful things have been done with bulldozers. We all know that. Okay, I'm sorry. Very quickly, I see people using that in conjunction with the animals around the freshwater marsh. That's what I want to see.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Lance Williams. I am a resident of Playa del Rey. I own and operate a business on Playa del Rey, which is bordering the wetlands. I have seen firsthand what the Friends have done there, and the partial restoration that they've done is incredible. I would love to see more of this restoration continue. This seems like a little overreaching, but I think if it's done carefully and with everything that needs to be done, it could be a wonderful place and draw back from some of the degradation that's occurred. I'd also like to say there is a parking lot behind Culver Boulevard that is used to access the wetlands. that is also used by the community. We have a community of businesses and people, residents who use that area because there simply isn't any other place. I'd like to see that continue to be used by the public and not closed off from sunset to sunrise. It would be very difficult on the area for other people. I'd like to cite the Coastal Commission statute of 30212.5. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. My name is Jill Stewart. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Coalition to Preserve LA. We focus on strategic planning, affordable housing, and environmental stewardship. One of our big issues has been the uncounted carbon released by overdevelopment in Los Angeles. It's called embedded carbon. In the BALLONA wetlands, the parallel would be to move the high areas, the uplands, down to a different area, and to make water where there is no water now. For 10 years, you will be, in fact, disturbing the soil and releasing a tremendous amount of what's now sequestered carbon in the plants. I read the EIR section. I was really disappointed at the light touch you gave that problem. It might be too new of a science for you, maybe. There are several reports coming out of Berkeley, University of Washington, and other areas that talk about what happens when you release sequestered carbon. I think you need to take another look at that. I think one of the reasons that there's a sort of a false debate going on is that you didn't give a good third or fourth option except no option. You didn't talk about the real effects on climate change because you ignored sequestered carbon issue and the embedded carbon issue. Los Angeles was, in fact, the place where a huge soil symposium was held about 2 months ago. Now that serious environmentalists are realizing that disruption of the soil over the history of mankind has played an incredible role in global warming and climate change. I didn't see that addressed seriously in your environmental impact report. There are many soil disruption scientists now coming out with data. I think you need to take a whole new look at your severe disruption of the wetland area. You're not counting what you're going to do to climate change for many years, perhaps many decades into the future of a terrible effect on climate change in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Jonathan Coffin.
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Coffin. These alternatives up here, they're really industrial scale habitat destruction and conversion. It's an earth-moving project. Every time I've ever walked out into these areas that everybody says is degraded and there's nothing there, I walk very softly, I point at the ground and look at the burrows and I say, who lives there? If you've ever walked out there, you'll see hundreds of ground nesting bees buzzing around, lizards and ants coming in and out of the burrows. I've seen California king snakes pulling gophers into the holes. I've seen harvest mice at the edges of pickleweed that's out there. I've seen belted savanna sparrows out today. If you were out there today, you'd see the white-tailed kite is there. The meadowlarks are there. They're there all day long, and then during the evening they'll retire to different areas. The ostracods are there when the rains come and you have the ponding in the areas, and these depressions, these dusty, silty clay soil depressions. If you walked out there now, you just might want to kick the dust off your feet thinking it's just all death and stuff, but it's not. There's lots of things there to see. It takes focus and attention to see and to learn what's there. To go ahead with a project like this is not restoration, it's something else. It's destruction first. It's a huge disturbance and interruption in the nature that's using it every day there today. The black-bellied plovers that come from long distances to be here, the bufflehead that come from long distances to be here, the belting savanna sparrows that go across Banana Creek and that are on the levees all day long and on the pickleweed and they're on the fences and they're climbing up and down the mustard that's there and they're going into the pickleweed, and there's ants and there's velvet ants there, and there's wolf spiders and brown spiders, and I could go on forever, and that's enough. So.
Okay, thank you.
Tori Chair, LA Program Director for the Trust for Public Land. We are a member of the Wetlands Restoration Coalition. In 2003, the Trust for Public Land, in collaboration with community activists, resource agencies, and state and local officials, facilitated the acquisition of the 483-acre Ballona wetlands site. We did this using Prop 12 and Prop 50 funds, really as the first step with the intention of getting the wetlands back and fully restored. In Los Angeles County, where 98% of coastal wetlands have been developed, fully restored wetlands like Ballona offer critical recreational and resiliency infrastructure for our region. Now that the EIR is released, we are glad to support full and science-based restoration, and we support a combination of alternatives 1 and 2. These alternatives provide the best value for restoration and public access and appropriate recreation. The Trust for Public Land strongly supports the Wetlands Restoration Coalition principles, specifically the need for full restoration. As a member of this coalition and consistent with these principles, we encourage the department to first, ensure meaningful and appropriate public access that is compatible with habitat protection. Any approved alternative should consider bike and pedestrian access to and from this site, as well as critical parking for visitors. Maximize restoration while planning for and managing impacts from climate-related sea level rise. Restore the wetlands in a way that is holistic and self-sustaining and connects the wetlands to the greater LA creeks and watersheds. We ask you to bring Ballona back and really complete the project that was started in 2003 when we completed the acquisition of the nearly 500-acre site.
Good evening, John Nahas. The draft EIR was released to the public on October 6th of this year. That's 32 days to read 1,242 pages. That's not including all of the other peripheral information. And understanding that the deadline for public comment has been extended to February, what I can't understand is why the rush to this public hearing? Colonel, why the rush? This is such a, as clearly can be seen, a very controversial topic. And yes, you're only legally bound to have one public hearing. I really take offense, having a degree in biology, just to try to decipher the information in this document, and then to come and give you testimony, realizing that yes, you can provide written testimony, but I guarantee you the vast majority of the public cannot go through that document in the amount of time that you're asking them to do and get qualitative analysis. And also the complete disparity in this hearing compared to an EPA hearing, where they require that the audience receive issues of what the decision to be made is, and things that clearly have not been done here this evening. So I take offense to that as well. I really believe that we should have a central ballpark which you should provide to both sides here. And we're hearing echo chambers, and I just feel like, a reasonable person would come to this meeting and would not understand what's going on unless they were part of two groups here. And that's unfortunate. I'm also very concerned in that I've read documentation that says that restoration of wetlands is highly unsuccessful. There's a study out of UC Berkeley by, I believe let me get it right here, Moreno Mateos in 2012. The study clearly indicated that wetland restoration is a farce. The study looked at measurable factors such as biodiversity conservation, fish production, water purification, erosion control, and carbon storage. The study found that restored wetlands contain 23% less carbon than untouched wetlands, while the native plants was 26% lower. So, given the science that's out there, it's incredible that, you're trying to rush judgment here, and it's crazy. Also, I was in the meeting in the California Coastal Commission, and it was very clear that there was...
So your time's up.
If I could just...
10 seconds.
One thing is that they were all getting socked in the gut because of Banning Ranch, because someone had gone in there and had disturbed the land.
I appreciate your time.
And they just didn't understand that they couldn't do anything at that point. Once
your time is up. You can submit the rest of your comments in a written form.
It's the camel's nose under the tent.
I'm Dun May, D-H-U-N, last name M-A-Y. I appreciate this opportunity.
As a longtime resident of the area, a Zoroastrian, and an advocate of veganism, I implore you to proceed in a way which genuinely respects all life. Even doing nothing may be far better than bulldozing BALLONA. I urge you to consider a careful, gentle, true, actual restoration. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sharon King. I've been a homeowner in Mar Vista for almost 20 years. The BALLONA Wetlands is a vibrant place full of life. The wetlands foster all kinds of native plants and provide critical habitat to countless species of insects, birds, and animals. It is well documented in photography. It is in no way a place that needs to be devastated by the radical actions that have been proposed in these alternatives. The proposed actions will destroy the habitat and the lives of the creatures who depend on that place to live. That's their home. I'm especially concerned, personally, about the effect it will have on the native herpetofauna, the lizards, the snakes, the frogs. They will be left behind. I guarantee you, you will not be able to recover them all. This is not what the creatures who call this area home deserve. This is not what local homeowners and businesses deserve, and not what we have elected our representatives for. The alternatives will, in short, be injurious to the public interest. I have one question to pose, not to you, but just kind of rhetorically. If, as you say, the BALLONA Wetlands is dying, it's 95 or 7% dead, why on earth have they been taking people, taking children on tours to view its degraded corpse?
And good evening, my name is Craig Cadwallader, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Surfrider Foundation South Bay chapter, one of the founding members and on the steering committee of the Wetlands Restoration Principles Coalition. I would like to voice our organization's support for a robust and science-based restoration plan that brings back BALLONA to a highly functioning and biologically diverse condition. Surfrider South Bay has conducted water quality sampling and testing at the BALLONA Freshwater Marsh since 2005. We have documented significant improvement in the quality of water discharged from the freshwater marsh as a direct result of recontouring the marsh and surrounding land, and as a bonus, have observed impressive increases in wildlife using the marsh for foraging and nesting. Prior to restoration, only about 50 species of birds were found in that area, and after restoration, more than 250 species have been identified at the marsh. And I might want to point out that that marsh was mechanically contoured, and I see more wildlife there every day when I do water sampling there myself, and it's an amazing, beautiful area. We have some concerns about accounting for sea level rise, and we hope that that will be properly addressed. And finally, personally, we have a problem with the parking structure that is proposed on the land, just as we did with the Annenberg proposed animal hospital that was, we don't believe that that sort of structure belongs on public land. We'd like to see it across the street on the parking lots there. So we hope you proceed in a responsible, science-based manner, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak on this, and let's bring back BALLONA. Thank you.
My name is Leslie Purcell, Leslie-Purcell. I have not had a chance to read the full EIR-EIS, but I would like to make a couple comments. I'm concerned about the proposed levees and the use, if you do build these very large structures, my experience in Ventura, where we have them also, they have to use Roundup. They don't allow any animals or plants, and so they use potentially rodenticides as well. I'm raising this as an issue because we've seen that happen before and had a lot of secondary kill. I would agree that we need a hydrology study, and one of the main issues, it used to be much more wet in these areas. The area between Jefferson and Culver was quite a nice wetland on occasion, and now it's very dry. I raised the issue of what's the water being pumped out possibly at Playa Vista as one of the causes. I would say again, we don't need a big engineering project. We want a much more gentle restoration here. And we'd like to have any cultural sites be protected. We had a horrendous experience at Playa Vista when they dug up over 1,000 burials for a runoff channel and got away with it. And SB 18 was passed and signed into law, but it did not take effect in time for that to be protected. So we would not like to see anything like that occur again. Another longer comment period would be helpful, and I guess the first do no harm and a more gentle approach is what's required. Thank you.